All right. Hello, Fortinos, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is September 8th, 2022. And what an eventful day it has been, hasn't it? We all know, we've all heard about the Queen and the Queen's passing today. So our prayers go out to her and her family. Everybody mourning. I know a lot of people have their own little things of what they think and what they believe. That's your own business. My prayers go out. Hopefully, she's in the right place. I am not the judge of that, so I will leave it to the judge. But she's had some interesting numbers, didn't she? She was queen for 70 years. How interesting is that? Because as I was preparing this video yesterday and I started working on it, it came about because of a video that was posted in the forum. And there's this whole thing that we're going to get into, again today, in relation to 50 and 70, but not the way you guys are thinking. For those who have been around for a little bit, you're going to see it from another perspective, the opposite end of what we've been talking about. So it's very interesting that, she was ruling for 70 years, and the video that was planned for today that I'm talking to you about right now was also planned for September 8th. So planned for September 8th, and she ruled for 70 years, and I'm going to do a video with an understanding of 70 years as you have not seen before, except maybe we chatted about it a couple years ago, and there's a couple brothers, maybe more, and sisters. You're going to see Brian's going to know this. I believe Ed and some of those over at Mike's channel from 165 who brought it to my attention a while back. We talked about it briefly, but we thought back then there was no way it was possible because it meant one more year or it meant 2 more years. It just wasn't lining up. Well, we're going to talk about that today, and these guys know what I'm talking about. And like I said, it just so happens that I was going to talk about it on September 8th. Well, now, why September 8th? Why is September 8th a big deal? What does it matter? Well, brothers and sisters, you know what it matters for in this ministry, right? In Ministry Revealed, this was the video I did on September 8th, 2017. Look at how small the views are. I don't recommend people go back and watch it because you have to understand, at this point, I had not begun to receive the revelation of the open books. I'm going to show you the moment in here from the 27:20 mark to the 26:20 mark to about the 27:20 mark. You're going to witness the moment that this ministry became Ministry Revealed, the revelation of the open books in the 14 years, or the revelation of the 14 years in the open books. And it began from this moment right here that you're going to see. And the moment it began was 5 years ago today, on September 8th, 2017, the number of grace. And here we are. The queen dies. She was the ruler. She was queen for 70 years. She passes on this date, and I'm doing a video that was already planned for 70. Man, it's just really cool. These little, those little God winks, you would say, right? I'm not saying it's directly connected. I'm just saying interesting how these things happen. But let me share this with you, and then we'll move on. Listen to this.
Then the stars are going to be cast to the earth. The dragon is going to stand before the woman, and the child be delivered, but the child is caught up. So the child isn't caught up. The church isn't caught up. And there's a man child, and there's a her child, and a her child. We are the her child. I won't get into the man child thing right now, but we are caught up. So when are we caught up? Well, we're caught up after we see these things. When we look at a lot of the Old Testament stuff, and even some of the New Testament, in Isaiah 66, before she travailed, before, and that's the case. When we look at some of these, then we would be gone before. So what is this part here? And you know what? Something just struck me as I'm reading this, but I'm not going to go into it right now. So
did you hear that? Right at that point, I realized, and when I look back on it, I love it, man, because it dawns on me. I'm here in Revelation 12. Earlier, I was in Luke 21 and going through some differences. And, this was all at the time of Revelation 12 coming. And I hadn't yet begun to understand what the Lord was leading me to. And it was right here in that moment that you just heard when I said, wait a second, because something had just caught my attention. And what had caught my attention was the fact that we've all been saying the rapture of the church is in Revelation 12:5. You guys know the story. We got a video, right? One of the not videos not too long ago, right here, 4 videos ago, 5 videos ago, Revelation 12, the whole story. You will get the whole story now. But at this point, I didn't yet know the whole story. I didn't even realize the books were going to open. I didn't realize there was a revelation of 14 years and the 21-year big picture and that it brought us all the way back to creation and to the end of days. And I mean, it has been a wild journey. But this date, September 8th, 2017, is the day I will never forget when I said that, because you heard me say that in Isaiah 66, verse 7, this was, we'll say the old classic, this was the humdinger. This was the one that I said, wait a second. Because as I was saying the Old Testament, the New Testament, and I brought up Isaiah 66, verse 7, it was because of this. Before she travailed, she brought forth. If she brought forth before she travailed, as I was saying it, I instantly realized that, wait a second, if this is the travailing, if this is the pain, if this is the dragon and the time when the Antichrist is coming and getting power, I said, oh my goodness, this cannot be the pre-trib rapture. That's what was going on in my head immediately in this moment. And I was like, okay, if anything comes from this, I'll let you guys know. The following videos forward brought in piece by piece by piece. And I just wanted to share that as a little recap because it was 5 years today that it all began. Just, it's so awesome. You know, I've said it a hundred times. I would have never thought I would be doing this in a million years, in a million lifetimes. I would have never, ever thought to have received something that we didn't even know existed. You understand how crazy that is? We didn't even know that there was such a thing as 14 years. I didn't look for 14 years. I didn't look for the revelation of who the Gospels were speaking to. I didn't know it was a thing. You understand? It is Holy Spirit led. It has always been Holy Spirit led. And we just have jumped the gun on understanding or believing we were understanding what the dates were of when it was all starting. But I don't believe we're jumping the gun anymore. We've talked a lot about the 70 years of Israel. Well, did you know there's another 70? You know, things have to run in Jubilee cycles and they have to be connected to 70, and we're looking for a 70, and Israel has 70. But guess what? So does Jerusalem. I'm going to prove it to you today as we prove out some of these other points and tie them in to this revelation and bring it in to, you guessed it, our dear constellation Taurus. It's going to be mind-blowing, brothers and sisters. It's going to be so much fun, so exciting. For anybody that's new to the ministry, when you hear me talk about the forum, it's because you can go to our website, ministryrevealed.com. You can click right here. And when you go there, it's free to sign up. There's over 1,000 people in there, and people are sharing all sorts of things from all over the world, whether it's a Bible study, prayer requests, whether it's news and events going on around the world. All sorts of things are going on in there. And you could join for free from the website. You click in the menu box, you go to the forum, it takes a couple seconds to sign up, and you're in. So when you hear me talking about that, that's where it is. And it's like-minded brothers and sisters all over the world. All right. The other thing I would recommend you do is you really want to come to this playlist, because right off the bat, you're hearing me talk about 14 years and you're hearing me talk about who the Gospels are speaking to. And it's going to be very confusing if you're new to the ministry. But you come to this playlist and you come to this right here, the Revealed End Time Study Notes Series. You click on this, and then you'll see this first intro video right here. It's a 30-minute Bible study, and it's about who the Gospels are speaking to. You can see the date right here, September 8th, 2017. I talk about how it all began, and I begin by sharing how it started by the revelation of who the Gospels are speaking to. And within about a month and a half, I started to get the revelation of 14 years. And a lot of people, when they hear 14 years, they begin to lose their mind because they say, oh, tribulation, 7 years, that was too long already. Well, why? Are you planning on being here? Who cares if you don't plan on being here? You see, what it means is you get to go 7 years sooner than the rest of the world thinks it is. You're going to come to realize that in this beginning intro, you're going to begin to taste the understanding of who the Gospels are speaking to. You're going to see some fantastic things, like Jesus in Luke had a white robe, or gorgeous it was called, but it means white and radiant. Mark, he was arrayed in purple, and Matthew, going to the cross, he was arrayed in scarlet. Were these guys colorblind? No, it was prophecy. There was prophecy. There was prophetic in the Gospels, but we never understood it until it started happening here in this ministry. This is the intro. You can even go into the description box under the video, and you can see all the links under the description box. You see there's links to support the ministry. You can go to the timeline chart. You can go to the chapters to years. You can go to ministryrevealed.com. You can email us from down here, and you can get the study notes from whenever you see a study note in a video in the intro series. The study notes will be in the description box below for you to print, or at the website at ministryrevealed.com. And our website, ministryrevealed.com, it's a beautiful website. Our brother Jimmy put it together, and it has one-click downloads. You don't need any apps, any nothing. If there's a video you want to download and you want to keep and you want to study it, you want to share it with others, it's a one-click download. It's awesome. All right. So this is just the intro. To understand more, when you go to the Ministry Revealed website, we also wrote a book. And in the book has a lot more detail in chapter 1 in the revelation of the Gospels. When you get to chapter 2, it's this second video, this second intro, which is a 30-minute Bible study on the revelation of 14 years and how it's understood by understanding who the Gospels are speaking to. When you understand who the Gospels are speaking to, that Luke is speaking to the bride of Christ. So it was Matthew, Mark, Luke, but the last shall be first and the first shall be last. Okay? Matthew, Mark, Luke, which are the synoptic gospels, in the end, it's Luke, Mark, and Matthew. It's awesome to understand. That's why he was arrayed in a gorgeous robe. It's a white, radiant robe like the bride. Yet in Mark and Matthew, they're purple and scarlet. Those are both tribulation colors. You're going to realize that even though all our lives we've been taught from Matthew, the reason for the differences in Mark is because Mark is written to the house of Israel, the Gentiles that are grafted in. It's called the world. That they went all over the world. So it's called the world, the house of Israel, the Gentiles grafted in. Those are those who weren't ready, who were caught up in the world, who were asleep. They're going to endure seals. And as you saw in the video where it all changed for me on September 8th, when I realized Revelation 12:5 wasn't and couldn't have been the pre-trib rapture, it came to be revealed shortly after that the truth was that was the mid-trib rapture. That was the rapture of the great multitude in Revelation chapter 7, which meant that if there's been arguments and debates for 200 years on whether it's pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib, guess what? When you understand who the Gospels are speaking to, you find out that all three of them are true. Luke's group is the pre-trib bride of Christ. Mark's group is the mid-trib great multitude rapture of the church. And post-trib is when Jesus returns feet down on the Mount of Olives at the end of Judah's portion of trumpets. It is 7 years of seals and 7 years of trumpets. You'll begin to understand that in video 2. And when you go to the website, you can read chapter 2. You can read it from the website directly in English. You can download the PDF in 5 different languages, or if you want a paperback, you can go to Amazon. But the the PDF is downloadable for free. All right. So go to the Ministry Revealed. There's a lot of resources there for you. These are going to begin to open your mind, and every moment of them is worth your time. A 30-minute Bible study that will blow your mind, that will change everything you had questioned and wondered. And why does it seem there's contradictions in the scriptures? Like a great one that we'll touch on a bit again today are things like, why in Luke with the story of Jonah does he say he would be as Jonah was, a warning for 40 days? The world tells us of church that he already fulfilled that, but he didn't, because in his resurrection he never went around warning the world that this was happening after 40 days. It was prophecy. In Mark's story, he says you get no warning, no sign, and he got in the ship and he left. And then you go to Matthew, and he says he's going to be as Jonah was, 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, which means sometime on the 4th day, because he's going to be a full 3 days and a full 3 nights in the heart of the earth. That was prophecy. That hasn't happened yet, because at Christ's death and resurrection, you have to understand the count. It said on the 3rd day he resurrected, but it counts from when he was taken into the hands of sinful men, when he was crucified the next day, when he was taken into the hands of sinful men in the evening, he was crucified during the day, he was put in the tomb, and on the 3rd day he resurrected. He was only in the tomb for about a day and a half. The whole story was only 2.5 days. So what on earth is going on with him saying he would be like Jonah was, which would be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights? You see, it didn't just say 3 days, it said 3 days and 3 nights, so that we wouldn't get confused. But guess what? The world still got confused. You're going to realize that that was prophetic, which means he's going to have to do it again. But there's a reason. We're not going to go into all that tonight, but we're going to touch on some of this as we build into what we're going to be talking about. So that's what you're going to begin to understand in chapter 2 or in the second video. Well, then you're going to have some questions, and you're going to say, well, wait a second. How did we miss all of this? The answer is found in this big video, the 3rd one. It's all because of Matthew. You're going to realize, because all of our lives we have been taught from the Gospel of Matthew. And the Gospel of Matthew said, hey, the church said, just look at Mark to take other tidbits from it, and look a little bit at Luke, and we'll take a little bit of tidbits from it, because they think it's the whole same story. And then they call these things contradictions, or people call them contradictions, and nobody can quite explain. So Muslims have a heyday in trying to say, well, look at these contradictions because it was written by man. And pastors can't explain it, and they say, oh, it's just perspective. Well, anybody that studies knows it's just not perspective. I just showed you right there in explaining to you the story of Jonah. So it's clearly not perspective. If one says 40, one says nothing, and one says 3 days and 3 nights, that's not perspective. Something is wrong. A white robe, a purple robe, a garment, and a scarlet robe, that's not perspective. That's different. You see, you're going to begin to understand that the reason we've missed these things is because everything was taught to us from a foundation of Matthew, which is to the Jews. So what happens if you're watching and everything you've learned was from the Jews, and you believe in a pre-trib and that it's everybody going pre-trib? Well, guess what? It's as if you're at the end of Mark's discourse, like you're at the end of Mark's gospel, and it's like you're at the end of seals. Why do you think the great multitude rapture is after the 6th seal and before the 7th? Hello? You've been twisted to think that it's pre-trib, and it's not. But is there a pre-trib? You better believe it. It's just not everybody that calls the name of Jesus. It's those who are watching and praying, who are seeking him, who love him. That's who it is. So you're going to get all this and so much more in these intro videos right here. But the first 3 are the highly recommended. And then you can also go to the book and get it in greater detail as well. So it's exciting, brothers and sisters. It's been an awesome 5 years. And I cannot wait to see what's about to happen. I cannot wait to take part of it, however the Lord decides to use us or take us, because it is awesome. Anybody, again, who is relatively new to the ministry and hasn't yet watched the last video, if you've watched some of that playlist and you've begun to understand these things, I highly, highly, highly recommend you come and watch the last video. We begin the month of Virgo on Tishri 1, and the month of Virgo is the month we need to be in. And I'm not going to go into all the details of that, except to say the 50-day count begins. And the mystery to the revelation of the end time years is 50 days, then the 14 years, and then the final 50th Jubilee. What you're going to understand and what you're going to realize is that when this 7 of seals is over and this 7 of trumpets is over, it's the final Jubilee. Is there a bigger picture? Yes. It's like Jacob when he worked 20 years. Then he makes a covenant with his father-in-law. You see? It's the same thing. When the 13 years are over and the Lord returns feet down, he renews the covenant that he made in the 14th year, and then it's the final Jubilee year. So the big picture is 22. The picture of the literal seals and trumpets to the end is then 15. But what is it? It's a Jubilee cycle. You see, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, and the Jubilee, the 50th year. But what you're going to see tonight is that, yes, this is the Jubilee year. Yes, it is the 50th year. But what you're going to understand is we're about to get more clarity tonight, because it is the 50th year of Israel. And it's the 70th year of someone else, of another portion. It's awesome. It's so exciting. All right. So that's the 50 days, the 14 years, and the 50th Jubilee. We've got videos on that as well, called the End Time Code, from one of the videos. It's incredible. And we're going to be talking a little bit about it again today, where we spoke about the Shroud of Turin and the pendant that Jesus was wearing that they found. And because of the technology nowadays, they can read what is on that pendant. And what that pendant is the head of Taurus. And remember, Jesus is called the Alpha and the Omega. So I saw a post that said, well, there wasn't really evidence showing that when God told Moses that this was the beginning of the year and the beginning of your months, there's no real evidence, excuse me, that was Taurus. But there kind of was, right? There kind of is in Scripture. Even if we go to Revelation 22, we know that Jesus is called the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. What is the Alpha? Well, in Hebrew, it's the Aleph, right? The Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end. What is the Aleph? It's Jesus. In Genesis 1 verse 1, in the beginning, in Christ, Jesus is the beginning. The Jews even have it in their alphabet, right? They began with the letter Alpha as the head of Taurus because it was the beginning of their year. So we do have evidence that it is the beginning of the year. And if God made that the beginning of his years, and Jesus is the beginning, and it was the beginning of their months, and they knew it, but they've changed it by 2 months because the sun has gone off course over thousands of years by 2 months. Why would the Jews have called Taurus the beginning? Why would they have said Aleph and Alpha as the beginning if it wasn't the beginning? You see, it is, it was, and it should be. And that's what a lot of the last videos you guys know talks about, that if we're off by 2 months on the calendar to the Lord God's eyes, because the Lord God goes by the stars, not by the sun and the moon. The sun and the moon are for day and for night, one to rule the day, one to rule the night. But the stars are for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. We talked about that in the last video. So if this is true and we have understood it, the revelation that the Spirit gave us, that one truly understood Holy Spirit given revelation, then that means Tishri isn't really Tishri, but Tishri is Av. So it's not the 7th month, it's the 5th month, which means when you go to the 9th month, which is Kislev, Kislev is really the 7th month in the Lord God's eyes. And what was so fantastic about this is in doing the count, knowing that we needed to be in Virgo at the time of Av, everything lined up that when the Lord God is coming now to do his 40 days, like he said he would do as Jonah did, it landed in the midst of the Feast of Tabernacles, just like John chapter 7. It was so incredible. And I want to show that to you briefly because I'll delete some of these things along the way. Because I had one of our brothers share this with me today, or the other day. I got an email from him. I think it was our brother Jake, if I remember correctly. And what was interesting about it is that we know, well, that's going slow, is that we know this is what we're talking about, right? In verse 34 or verse 35 in Luke 21, verse 35 and 36. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. What's the snare? What's going to happen to them? They're going to be caught off guard. Okay, they're going to be caught off guard by what? The escape, the vanishing, the pre-trib bride of Christ, and the escape vanishing. Now, when I talk about the pre-trib, you'll hear me say, anybody that's new, you're going to hear me say escape. I don't generally use rapture because we know that the pre-trib one, Paul says, is like a rapture, and they're going to the third heaven. So it's like a rapture, but it's not the rapture, which he says is the second one, which is the one that you read in Revelation 12:5. And this is why I say escape, because in Luke 21:36 it says, watch ye therefore and pray always that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. So those who are accounted worthy to escape what? All of these things. Which means they're not even going to be here during the 40 days of the Son of Man when he's going to be as Jonah was. But when he shows up and the bride is the one that's going to see him coming while the world is in a panic, we will look up and the bride will vanish. But check this out. In Luke 21:35, it says it's going to be as a snare. So it's going to come as a snare on everybody left on the face of the earth except for the bride, because the accounted worthy will escape. Look at the word snare. Check this out. This is what our brother Jake shared. So it comes from the word trap or snare. That's normal. But it comes from the Greek word 4078. Are you ready for this? To set up a tent. So to set up or to pitch a tent. Does that sound familiar? That this snare, which is like a setting up and a pitching of a tent, is going to come upon all them who dwell on the face of the earth when the escape of the bride happens. Do you know what happens when you set up a tent? Do you know what time of year they set up a tent? Of course you do. John chapter 7. In John chapter 7, at the time of the pre-trib escape of the bride of Christ, it says it was the Jews' feast of tabernacles that was at hand. Do you know what the Jews do at their feast of tabernacles? They set up tents. They set up tabernacles and tents outside on their roof or out on their deck or in the yard. And they set up tabernacles, tents for 7 years. For 7 days. All right. Here it is right here. Look at that word. There it is. Boom, right there, connected to tabernacles. How's that? Let me highlight that for you. At the Festival of Tabernacles, they pitch tents. The snare that comes upon the whole earth was revealed, I believe, fully revealed now in the last video, fully connected to all of John 7. And when they pitch tabernacles, when they pitch their tents, and Jesus says his time isn't yet full come, why would Jesus say his time isn't yet full come? It had to be prophetic. He was already there. He was already traveling with the disciples. He had already been anointed, and yet he's saying, my time is not yet full come. What on earth does that mean, that his time wasn't yet full come? Yet he goes up in secret and shows up about the midst of the feast. Well, it just so happens at the end, coming to the end of 70 years on the God calendar count from Taurus, the 50 days begin at a war, like we know a short war will take place, and the 40 days of the Son of Man begin on the 8th day at the escape of the bride of Christ, and it's in the midst of the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles, the word for snare. That's awesome. Thanks for that share, brother. I was excited to share that one. All right. Now, check this out. Let's have a read here of Isaiah 46 to get us ready for this. Remember, so in Isaiah 46, starting in verse 9, remember the former things of old, for I am God and there is none else. I am God and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things that are yet to be done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do my pleasure. Calling a ravenous bird, this is interesting, calling a ravenous bird from the east. The man, you see, the man who's going to be the ravenous bird from the east, that executeth my counsel from a far country. Yea, I have spoken it. I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it. I will also do it. Hearken unto me, you stout-hearted, that are far from righteousness. I bring near my righteousness, it shall not be far off, and my salvation shall not tarry, and I will place salvation in Zion for Israel, my glory. Interesting, right? Who do we know is going to be in Zion at the end of seals? The Lord coming on heavenly Mount Zion at the end of seals, right? We're going to touch on that today too, as part of it. But you see, it's revealing the things from old, the things from the beginning that reveal the is to come. We know from Ecclesiastes what was shall be, and what is shall be. This is what we do. This is the essentially the source of everything that we talk about. Right? And here's what I want to start with. When we go here into Luke chapter 3, remember, for those that are new, this is going to be a little bit much, but in Luke chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, we know we have the story of John from his birth to the 8th day. The 8th day is the typology of the escape of the bride of Christ at his circumcision. Then chapter 2, you got the 40 days of the Son of Man in his birth as a typology of the 40 days of the Son of Man here, like we talked about with Isaiah 9. Then you get what? Then you have when Jesus, so it's the escape of the bride of Christ. The 40 days of the Son of Man start is the typology in chapter 2. Then in chapter 3 is when the Lord returns at the end of seals, at the end of the 6th year of seals. Then you go to chapter 4 when the Lord returns again, feet down on the Mount of Olives at the end of trumpets. So these are things we've talked about before. And what happens when you go to Luke chapter 3? The storyline in Luke chapter 3 is the story of a typology of when Christ returns at the end of the 6th seal on heavenly Mount Zion. When you understand, for those that are new, that Christ isn't coming just one time. We've all been told he doesn't return till feet down on the Mount of Olives. That is when the whole world will see him, will know who he is, will acknowledge him, because they will all see him as lightning from one end unto the other. But along the way, he's coming. And when you understand the differences in the Gospels, that is the revelation. So when you see here that you have the 6 seals, which represents 6 years of seals. Now, it doesn't mean 1 year, 1 seal, 1 year, the next seal, 1 year, the next seal. That's not what it means. Some will start and then end, and then others will begin, and some will overlap. Okay, so it just means that the 6 years of seals will play, the 6 seals will play out over 6 years. And in fact, the first seal plays out before the 6 years of seals even starts. So really, the first, the 5 seals, the from 2 through 6, will play out over 6 years. And what do you see at the end of the 6th year? You see the Lord coming. You see him who sits on the throne and the Lamb, and the great day of his wrath is coming. This is when he's coming on heavenly Mount Zion. This is what we read about in Daniel 2, I think, when you see the statue of gold and of bronze and the 10 toes, and the stone comes and breaks it up and smashes it all and becomes a great mountain. This is when the Lord comes on heavenly Mount Zion. But you know what happens from here? You go to chapter 7 and you realize, and this is why I was showing you what was and what is shall be, because if the beginning reveals the end, then the end can bring understanding to the beginning. The end can bring the is to come, once understood, can also help bring clarity to the is and the was. And that's exactly what I'm telling you about here. We're going to get back into Luke. You'll see why. So if the Lord is now here, he shows up on heavenly Mount Zion and the world is freaking out. He destroys all those who come to battle against him in the first war against the Lord. Antichrist is killed. The 10 kings are their kingdoms are taken away, but their lives are extended. The false prophet is still here, but his life was extended, but all authority was taken from him. And then what happens? Well, then you got the 7th year. The 7th year starts with the Lord sealing and being there with the 144,000. Then the 144,000 will help bring in the great multitude rapture with the smaller amount of workers that were working during seals to prepare these people. Then the 144,000 will help those seals workers to bring in the great multitude. This chapter 7 of Revelation, chapter 7, will play out over a period of about 7 months. We've talked about it in the past. By the time these guys get in and it's all done, it will be the 7th month in the 7th year of seals. You see, another thing that was shared, I think it was by Jake as well, was the story again of the little boy Nathan. Well, I guess he's 20 years old now, but oh no, it might even be 22 years old now. That's interesting. The Jewish boy Nathan, who had died and went to heaven, right? He was there for like almost 3 hours, but on earth it was like 15 minutes that he was there, that he was gone. And we all know that story. Well, he said in it that there was once this war and millions of people are dead, he says it will take them several months to bury all the people before they can come back up into the land. How about that? This kid had no concept of prophecy or anything, but he saw it in scattered ways. Like he saw some at the beginning, and then he talks about the end, and then he talks about the middle, and then he talks about the end again, and then he talks about the beginning, and then stuff in between. It wasn't in order. So I'm considering doing a video to break down what he talked about, because I guess Tim Foster had done a video recently and he had a transcript written out or typed out of everything that was said. So I thought it would be a great way to share it and to line it all up together for how we know it plays out. But I bring it up to say that those 7 months, as this great multitude rapture group is coming in, there's gonna be a burying of all these dead people first. And once that 7 months comes to an end, just like it's the Gog Magog war of Ezekiel 39. And then what? It was 7 months where they're going to be burying the dead. That's what's happening. That's the prophecy that's taking place here at the time of the great multitude rapture. This takes place over a period of 7 months in the 7th year of seals. And then when you get to the 7th seal, you see that? This is why people have been so confused. It's like they look through the things they maybe once saw as being clearly contradictory, but they look through it and do it so much that they can't even see it anymore. But if you go to chapter 7 again of Revelation, and there's 6 seals, and they see the Lord coming here, and you go to the 7th chapter, and it's the 144,000 sealed, the great multitude rapture, and then it's the 7th seal. How on earth can you possibly say that the great multitude rapture of chapter 7 is pre-trib? It's absolutely hilarious to think somebody thinks that. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean it in because they haven't studied the details. I mean, if 6 is here and 7 is there and in the middle is the great multitude rapture, it's pretty obvious. And so how long is this 7th seal? The 7th seal says it's about the space of half an hour, which I believe is a typology of about half a year. And about half a year, if 7 months was the first half, then about half an hour or about half a year is, in this case, going to be about 5 months. And then what happens? Then the trumpets begin. Okay? But what do we know? We know that the Lord is here at the beginning of trumpets, that he came at the end of the 6th seal, he was here during the 7th, and then he begins his ministry anew in the beginning of trumpets. And Zechariah helped us understand this, like 14 chapters, 7 years of seals. You get to chapter 8, and what do we see? The Lord has returned to Zion. It'll be the holy mountain of the Lord. He goes on to talk about let your hands be strong, because they're going to start building on the foundation that was laid during the time of seals. They're going to build the temple, and they're going to start rebuilding everything, the city and the streets and the wall. But they couldn't do it prior to this time, the Lord says, because he brought affliction. Peace was gone from the earth, and he brought affliction, for he set every man against his neighbor. That's the tribulation of seals. And now what's happening? The rebuilding starts, and who is there? The Lord is there. This is why in Revelation chapter 14, it's one of those mysteries that a lot of people couldn't figure out, is how on earth is the Lamb on Mount Zion with the 144,000 who were just standing before the Lord before the throne? Because heavenly Mount Zion came down. So why am I sharing this portion with you? Well, I want you to understand that in Luke chapter 3, in the typology of Christ here, in what is, so when we talk about what was, it's from creation to the time of Christ. What is, so that would be Old Testament. What is New Testament from Christ until the moment of the escape. And from the moment of the escape forward, it's the is to come. So when I'm talking about this here, we're saying in the is of what happened, we see down here that after Jesus was baptized, okay, that Jesus also being baptized and praying, the heaven was open, the Holy Ghost like a dove. And then what does it say in Luke 3:23? Jesus himself began to be about 30 years of age. What do we know about this 30 years of age? We've shared this in the past. When he began to be about 30, it was in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar. So in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, Jesus began to be 30 years of age. Now, when Jesus was baptized by John, this is why I shared to you the is to come of seals, to the end of seals into the start of trumpets, because it revealed to us what actually took place when Christ was here. You see, when John the Baptist baptized Jesus, John the Baptist was still around, right? Jesus goes off for 40 days. John the Baptist wasn't arrested yet. Jesus comes out, he chooses his disciples. John the Baptist wasn't arrested yet. Because you'll remember when you go into John chapter 3, in John chapter 3, starting in verse 22, it says, after these things came Jesus and his disciples into the land of Judea, and there he tarried with them and baptized. And John also was baptizing. In verse 24, it says, for John was not yet cast into prison. So it was at least about 2 months from the 40 days to choosing the disciples and now baptizing them, while John was over in another area also doing baptizing. Okay? And that's when a couple of them come to him and say, hey, that guy that you baptized over there, he's the rabbi over there, he's over there baptizing like you are. And he goes on to tell them, look, I told you I'm not the Christ. I'm the one that came to bear witness, right? I'm not the Christ. I told you there was somebody coming. And what did John say? He said, he must increase, but I must decrease. We know that relates to like the sun, right? The sun needs to decrease from its peak and the light needs to increase from its lowest part. So what is he saying? Well, we know that 2 months have passed. So at least 2 months have passed, and then John ends up in prison. If you go to the historical records about John the Baptist, you find out that John the Baptist was in prison for about 10 months. So if John the Baptist was still around for about 2 months and then was in prison for 2 months before being beheaded, well, then guess what? People were still looking to John the Baptist, even though Christ was there. There were those who were committed to John the Baptist and were following John the Baptist regardless, as long as he was still alive. So John hadn't completely diminished yet, but he had to completely diminish so that there was nobody left to turn to but Christ. So if it was 2 months approximately, and then about 10 months in prison, it was how long? It was about 1 year. So from the time of Jesus's baptism to the time of John the Baptist's death, and now Jesus really being the sole person people were looking to, was 1 year. Why is that important? Because it was revealed in the end of days. It's what brought clarity. So where we've been told that Jesus's ministry was only 3.5 years, it wasn't. It was 4.5 years. It was 3.5 after John was gone and Christ was the sole person they were looking to. But there was 1 year while John was still there, in or not, or in prison or out of prison, where they were still going there. They were going to the prison and they were lining up outside screaming to free him. They would go there day after day. And it was 1 year of that before Christ was the sole person. And how were we able to prove it? By showing you the end of days. When Christ comes at the end of the 6th seal on heavenly Mount Zion, what happens? There's the 7th year of seals. You see, he returns at the end of the 6th seal, like we just saw, and he's here for the 7th year, as I had just shown you. What happens at the end of the 7th year? He made a covenant at that 7th seal. That's what he did in that 5th month. He made a covenant with all nations. And then what? Then it starts 1 year, 2 years, so 8, 9, 10, or first year of trumpets, second year of trumpets, third year of trumpets and a half. So it'll be 3 and a half years of trumpets. The 11th year is 10 and a half years total, 3.5 years of trumpets. You understand what I'm saying? Christ was here for 1 year first, then took over his 3.5 year ministry. What was it with John the Baptist? It was a total of 1 year before John had passed. Then Christ fully took over and began his 3.5 year ministry. You see how what was shall be, or the is that shall be? It's going to replay, but not everything is the same. You're going to see later on, we're going to be talking about this thing of days as years. Many pastors have talked about it over the years, that things have played out in days. They will have typologies in the end of days as years, and it equals the 2.5 years that remained to the end of the 13 year of seals, where Satan has the power for 2.5 years. It represents the 2.5 days when Messiah had been cut off, taken at the hands of sinful men, crucified, and then buried, and then resurrected. That was 2.5 days. This time, this war that breaks out against him is going to take 2.5 years. Okay, we'll touch on that in a little bit. But why am I showing you this? Well, check this out. I had our brother Ivan work on this for me again. I probably actually needed to get him to do a little bit more. We're going to talk about Jerusalem in a little bit. That's what we're building to. But I want you to see this understanding and this revelation to really sink your teeth into these things. You see, when Christ, we have the time from when Christ was born, the conception, all the way to time of Christ. But I've changed it. I used to say from spring to spring. I wanted to keep it all from autumn to autumn, okay? From the fall season. It doesn't have to be any specific date, but just from the fall season. Some people believe he was born at trumpets. Some people believe he was born at tabernacles. Some people believe he was born at Hanukkah. So in that fall season, that autumn season, all right? Well, guess what? In Luke chapter 3, which is when Christ was baptized, it said that it was in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar that Jesus began to be about 30 years of age. Well, check this out. When you do the count from his birth that we've understood, in 2028, so if this is fall to fall, we know Jesus, if he was born in the fall, that's why we're going to stick with fall to fall. Jesus was born sometime in the fall of 28. In the fall of 28, or sorry, wasn't born in the fall of 28, but in the fall of 28, right at the beginning, right here, right at the beginning, which is the fall of 28, which means in the calendar year of 28 AD, in the fall, Jesus turned 30 years old, which means in 28 AD, when Jesus turned 30, it had to be in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar. Okay, so at the beginning, in from fall to fall, at the beginning of this, which is fall of 28 to fall of 29, Jesus turned 30. When he completed that first year, it would have been what? Well, when he completes this year, he turns 31. Okay, so this is the fall of 29. So when you get to the beginning of fall of 29, Jesus is now 31 years old. You following? Because this just moves up here. So from the fall of 29, Jesus is 31. This would be when Jesus officially begins. He completed 1 year from 30 to 31. So in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, Jesus is baptized, but John is still around. So even though Jesus is starting his ministry, the official him being on his own, where everybody is turning to him, doesn't happen until about the time Jesus turns 31, when John is killed. You following? So what do you have? He's now turned 31 right here. There's 1 year complete. He turns 32. There's 2 years complete. He turns 33. There's 3 years complete. And in what? From the fall of 32 to the spring of 33. Jesus isn't yet 34. He won't be 34 till the autumn, right? So he's what? 33 and a half years old in spring at Passover of 2033. How long was his ministry? 1, 2, 3, 4.5 years. Do you know how we can prove this? For those that are new and haven't seen this yet, I'm going to prove it to you. Because you see, 28 AD in the fall, when Christ began to be 30 when he was baptized, it said it was in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar in Luke 3 verse 1. So do you know how we can prove this? Check this out. You guys will remember this. This is from Nelson Waters. We're going to talk about this a little bit today in relation to the Shroud of Turin. They found these coins that were over the eyes of Jesus, and these coins, because of the technology with lasers nowadays, they can go in really deep and they could read what was on the coins. So listen to what was said about them.
Stephazar dates them to the time of Pontius Pilate, and specifically to the year 29 AD.
Okay, you hear that? Specifically to the year 29 AD, they were able to read those coins. And I'm going to share this with you right here about the coins. It says right here, this is from shroud.com, and these were the people that were able to really dig in and use technology and lasers and so forth on it over the years as technology continued to increase. Some of these guys were studying the shroud for like 30-something years. And this guy says, I was privileged to first have correctly dated that coin by identifying the Greek letters on the back, indicating that it was struck in the 16th year of Tiberius Caesar, or 29 AD. If the 16th year of Tiberius Caesar, according to historical records and the coins, was the equivalent of 29 AD, well, then the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, when Jesus began to be 30 years of age, must be what? Must have been 28 AD. Because this would be the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, and the 29th year, the 29 AD, was the 16th year of Tiberius Caesar when that coin was minted in his 16th year. In fact, I think I studied it in the past and spoke about it a long time ago, that when he made that coin, it had something to do to a commemoration or something he had done for his wife. And they know that it was the 16th year of Tiberius Caesar, and it was 29 AD. So guess what? Do you think I made this to fit? No, it had nothing to do with making it fit. You're going to see that as you continue the Shemitah year counts and you go all the way to the end of days, it's perfect. It's perfect. And it's all the more reason to get excited. Because you see, if the Bible said it was the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, which means it had to be 28 AD, because the coins were minted in 29 AD and it was the 16th year of Tiberius Caesar, that means in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar in 28 AD, Jesus turned 30. You see, these are the types of things, if you don't have this revelation of that 1 year in between, or that 1 year that starts it, there's no way people can understand it. That's why people get all sorts of twisted things, and some people believe that Jesus was crucified in 28 AD. The coins themselves prove that that's impossible. You can see there's so many awesome videos on the Shroud of Turin by the experts that were analyzing it, and Jews that were analyzing it for decades that have completely changed their minds. They understood what it was. They understood the timing. They talked about the properties of the blood and how it could still be read. I mean, it's fantastic. It's absolutely true that the Shroud of Turin was real. This ministry is one way to prove that it's true. And for us and for me, the most exciting was the pendant that they found Jesus wearing. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So if it was really 28 AD and he turned 30 when he was baptized, and everybody says that he was crucified, died, and resurrected at Passover time of 33 AD, how on earth do you get 4.5 years? How do you get one without the other? You understand, it's impossible to have one without the other if we all know the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar was 28 AD when Christ was baptized when he turned 30. And yet the evidence shows that it was 33 AD at Passover at his death and resurrection. How on earth is that possible? The end of days revealed it. The end of days revealed it. That it was 1 year while John was still there, and then 3.5 years. How did the end of days reveal it? By showing that the Lord returned at the end of the sixth seal, was here for that 1 year, brought in, sealed the 144, brought in the great multitude rapture as Joshua, and then makes the covenant with many nations, as we know from Zechariah. And then what? The rebuilding of the temple starts, and the city and the streets, and it's over 3.5 years. 3.5. John, 3.5 when he was here the first time. So these are the types of just awesome pieces that you can really grab in, you can really understand, and that we can prove. We proved it by revelation of the end of days. If the beginning can reveal the end, then the end understood in the beginning can help reveal clarity to things that haven't been yet understood. So what happens when you follow this structure? Well, check this out. Jesus began his ministry, which was what? Like we just said, it's as if it was the end of the sixth seal, and he's here for that 7th year of seals before he begins his 3.5 year ministry, his second one at the beginning of trumpets. Okay, well, look at what it equals. 28 to 29 AD was that first year. Watch this. Watch this. There's 2021, 2022 is the 70th year. It was a Sabbath year, of course, as we know. We showed earlier on the other chart how it's 7, 7, 7, 7, 7 easy years, and then 7 of seals, 7 of trumpets. What do you have? 7 of seals, 7 of trumpets. Well, watch this. When the 7 years of seals are over, look at this. Or sorry, I should say when the 6 years of seals are over, when does the Lord show up? He's here during the 7th year, I said, right? Look at what year it is. That's the year 2028, 2029. From the fall of 2028 to the fall of 2029 is the 7th year of seals. Did I make it up? Did I force the count? No. I had our brother Ivan do all the Sabbath year counts, all the Shemitah year counts, all the way back to Christ. All the way back to Christ. And guess what? That 1 year while John was still here, when he began to be 30 until 31, was the fall of 28 to the fall of 29. You still think I'm making this up? How about after he fulfills that 1 year? He filled what? He had that 1 year and then 1, 2, 3.5 years, right? Which would be he was cut off, right? In this case, when he came the first time, he was crucified, right? He was taken in the hands of sinful men. He was crucified, buried, and then resurrected on the 3rd day. That total was over 2.5 days in 33 AD. Well, let's go see if there's a repeat that's going to take place. But remember, days will be years in the end. Here's 28 to 29 AD. That's the 7th year of seals. This is the beginning of trumpets, when the Lord is going to be here for 1, 2, 3.5 years, which is what? Fall of 32 to the spring of 33. And what's going to happen to Messiah? He's going to be cut off. He's going to be cut off in the same year count 2,000 years later. And do you know what happens this time? We've talked about it, right? He's not going to be killed right away. What took 2.5 days historically is going to play out over what? 1, 2.5 years. Because the second half of trumpets, out of the last 3.5 years of trumpets that are there, we know Satan has 2.5 years when the pit is open and the Antichrist returns and the false prophet gets power and the pit is open and all that chaos. It's going to be a battle, as we talked about before, with the 2 witnesses. And what happens at the end of those 2.5 years that are a typology of the 2.5 days from the past? It's going to play out as years. And what happens at the end of the 6th trumpet? The 2 witnesses are killed. You see, if everything was if there were prophecy built into the stories of all of the Gospels, and we know that he didn't fulfill the 40 years like Jonah yet, and we know that Mark's group got no warning, and then Matthew's group, he's going to be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, and we know he didn't do that yet, and it's only Matthew that tells us that story. That's because it's to Judah. It's the second half of tribulation, which is the 7 years of trumpets. What is after 3 days and after 3 nights? Sometime on the 4th day. What does it say about the 2 witnesses? After 3 days and a half. 3 days and 3 nights and a half. Hello. Look at the year counts, guys. Look at the year counts. I didn't make this happen. It's what the counts of the scriptures have told us. We know it's 70 years for Israel. Why was this so important for us to understand the 70 years of Israel? We all know it, right? We all have now understood it. There is no more mystery of years for 70. It was funny. I was talking to this with a Sikh today. I was at a shop, and I didn't know what religion he was or what he was, and he's a Sikh. And so I was telling him about what I do and what I teach, and we were talking about all these things. Because guess what, guys? First of all, he was willing to listen, but second of all, if you let them know before it happens, I told him this. I'm letting you know some of these things before it happens, so that when it begins to come to pass, you're going to say, I remember that crazy guy. I remember what he told me. And if he told me this and now it's happening, then guess what? The Bible's true and so is Jesus. Cry out and repent, confess your sins to him, and accept him into your life, because it's all true. All right? So what is so important about this? Well, this is something we've talked about many times, right? Many, many, many times. This is Leviticus 19, 23 through 25. And it was so important for us to understand, because listen to what he says. And when ye shall come into the land, and shall have planted all manner of trees, we know it's 3 years, it's uncircumcised. You can't eat from it. He says, but in the 4th year, the fruit is to me, to praise withal, which means a Thanksgiving holiday praising celebration, which now lines up with what we know, right? When you go to the calendar and you understand that Tishri is really the 5th month, according to Taurus being the beginning, this is really Av and not Tishri. And that means that when you get down to, what is it? Cheshvan. Is it Cheshvan? Yes. Am I right? Yes. When you get down to Cheshvan, it's where am I at? It's not really sorry. Here I am. I was looking for the first day of Kislev. I'm like, wait a second. When you get to Kislev, it's not really the 9th, but the 7th month. And guess what? The 24th of November in America, the last day before the 14 years begin on true Tishri, according to the stars, is Thanksgiving celebration and the beginning of 14 years. It's awesome, right? It's awesome. And that's what this word praise means in the 4th year when it's holy to be praised to the Lord. And then the 5th year, it's now yours. We shared how important this was because in the modern day of Israel, when they were coming into the land, they needed to decide what year it was in their cycle of Shemitahs, the Sabbath year. They needed to discern and understand what year it was going to be. See, a simpleton like me would have just said, year 1, right? They were gone for thousands of years. They were gone for 2,000 years. Why not just say, oh, it's just year 1? But no, they went and sought out their records and decided and agreed upon 4 years left in a Shemitah cycle. And the 5th year began the new cycle. Isn't that fascinating? That's exactly what Leviticus told us. Leviticus said 3 years is not, you can't touch it. 4th year is mine. And the 5th year forward, it's yours. Well, that's exactly what they did. You see, in the modern state of Israel, it says the first year in the modern state, the first Shemitah year in the modern state of Israel was 1951 to 1952. That's exactly right. There's your Shemitah, 1951 to 1952. Do you know that when we put this together, when we finally understood Leviticus, do you know we still didn't know Israel had counted like that? Somebody had sent me the email later showing that when Israel came into the land, they said 1951 to 1952 was their actual Shemitah Sabbath year. It was perfect. And if that was perfect, and this meant year 1 was 52 to 53, and you go all the way to 70 years, look at that. That's where we are right now. The only issue that we've had all year was where the Lord God was counting from, but we knew for the entire year, we have known that the connection was to Taurus because that was the one supernatural revelation that the Lord confirmed from a video, as you guys all know, about the 50-14-50. It's the revelation of the ministry, the meaning of the end time code revealed in the ministry before we even knew it. It's powerful. It was very important. We needed to understand it. But whose 70 is this? Right? Whose 70th year is this? Well, he said when they come into the land. He said when they come into the land. This is important because let me show you what I want to go to. Watch this. We know this one very well. Psalms 90 and 10. The days of our years are 70, 70, and if by reason of strength they're 80, which is 80 years, it says those 10 years in their strength, their labor and sorrow, which is all about tribulation. Then soon cut off, which is that about 6 months, and then we fly away, which is mid-trumpets, when the Jews of Matthew 24, when they fly away on the wings of an eagle at mid-trumpets, like Revelation 12:14. This is 14 years. When does it start? After 70 years. After 70 years. That's why the last video was such a big deal. You know why? It's the end of the line. There is no more 70-year count for the land of Israel. I purposely chose those words. For the land of Israel. There is no more 70-year count. He said when they come into the land. It was 3 and 1, and in the 5th year forward was theirs. He was talking to Israel. I want you to remember that. He was talking to Israel. And so when we understand that, and we know that he's talking to Israel, well, guess what? If it was to Tishri 1, according to the Hebrew calendar only, well, time's up. Where are we? We're the 8th. I'm talking to you from right here. Where's the 40 days of the Son of Man? Where's the pre-trib escape? A lot of people like to think, oh, well, maybe Alan's just wrong in understanding the 50 days, this above 14-year portion. No, I'm not. It is the revelation that is part of the entire storyline, confirmed by the Holy Spirit from the very beginning. Meaning there had to be an issue, right? But we couldn't know there was still something wrong until we finally got to the point where that count didn't equal anymore. Because why? Well, we got caught up, as you guys know in the last couple of videos, we got caught up by counting from Taurus and then falling into a Hebrew count. When we stuck now with Taurus, we realized this is the month of Av. This is the first attack, right in the midst of the Jews' feast, as we know. Which means on the 2 months off, Kislev is the beginning of the 14 years. And guess what? There is 0 left. There is no end of 70 remaining. Yet they knew their Shemitah cycle. Yet the revelation of doing the Sabbath year counts all the way from Christ. All the way from Christ gave us the same answer. Gave us the same answer. I'm building on this graph for you guys. I want you guys to understand all the things that are in here revealed. Just like this. Just like this. Playing out again exactly 2,000 years later. And it just so happens you follow that count. You follow the count. You follow the count. And it equals 4 years left in a Shemitah cycle before the 5th year starts again. And when you count those 70, you count those 70 years. Here, give me one sec. You count those 70 years, and it's 21 in 2022. Did I make any of that up? Was I 1, 2, skip a few, 3, 4? I guess it would be 1, 2, skip a few, 7, 8, right? Did I do that? No. Everything is added next to next to next. And when it's all done, what is this? Well, if you follow the Jews, right? Go from fall to fall. So in the fall of 36, what is it? Well, it's really the year 2037. It just starts late in 36, right? And it ends in the fall of 2037. Of course, it'll be according, I believe it'll just stick to the Lord God's calendar. And so what year is it? 2037. What is the Jubilee year of 2030? What is the year 2037? Well, the 14 years will be over. It'll be the final Jubilee. There's the Jubilee. What is this Jubilee to? Israel. Who gets the benefit of Israel when they come into the land? Who when the 14 years are over? Remember at the mid trumpets when Messiah is cut off, and then there's 2.5 years of Satan and the Antichrist and the pit opened, and a war that takes place against the 2 witnesses. When that 2.5 years is over, there's the 14th year still. When that 14th year is over, the second 3.5 years of trumpets will be over. During those 2.5 years, including the final 7th year of trumpets, remember what we just read? Remember what we just read in Psalms 90 and 10? In Psalms 90 and 10, it said, and soon cut off, and we fly away. Well, Revelation 12:14, when they fly away, how long are they flying away for? They're going to be gone for 3.5 years. So they're going to be gone for the second half, for the entire second half of trumpets. They'll be gone until the end of the 14th year. So what happens in what happens in the 15th year Jubilee? Well, it'll be the year 2037. It'll be the final Jubilee. And what happens? Well, we can see it on one of our charts, right? Show it to you right here. Here's the final Jubilee. In the big picture, it's the 22nd. In the end time picture, it's 15. It's the final Jubilee year, 2037. And what if we go look at Ezekiel chapter 48? For anybody that's new and doesn't understand this, these are books that have opened to us, that reveal to us the end of years. They reveal to us within them, within their chapters, understanding of events that will happen in the end of days during those years. You see in chapter 39, isn't that the Ezekiel 38-39 war? And then what happens? It says they're going to be picking bones, burying bones for 7 months. But what does it say before they're burying bones for 7 months? It says that they're going to burn weapons for 7 years. That's right. The 7th year of seals, 6 years of trumpets, that's a total of 7 years. At the end of the 6 years of trumpets, guess what? There's one more battle. Hello. That's the 7 years. This is when they beat their weapons into plowshares and pruning hooks. This is when they beat their pruning hooks and plowshares into weapons. This is when they're burying bones and people for 7 months. It's chapters to years, we call it. Well, check this out. When you go to Ezekiel 48, which is the Jubilee year, look what happens. In Ezekiel 48, the end of Ezekiel, why is it important? How did it get laid out like this? Well, if you go to Ezekiel chapter 33, and you can see Ezekiel 33 relates to this above 14 years before it starts, just like John 7 did. What happens in Ezekiel 33? The Son of Man warning the people. Hello. That's what Jesus said he would do as Jonah, right? So what happens when you get to chapter 48, which is 15 chapters later? Ta-da! Now these are the names of the tribes from the north end to the coast of the way of these places, Damascus, the portion of Dan. From the portion of Dan, the portion of Asher, the portion of Naphtali, the portion of Manasseh. What happens in the 15th year? What happens in the Jubilee year? All tribes will be returned to their land. For what? Their promised millennial reign. Hello. But I have a question for you. Who gets Jerusalem? Hello. Whose portion is Jerusalem? Who does Jerusalem belong to? Do all the tribes get to share in Jerusalem? No, man, they've each got their own borders, right? Who does Jerusalem belong to, brothers and sisters? We know who Jerusalem belongs to. Let's go to Leviticus, excuse me, chapter 25. We're going to talk about more of this stuff here too in 25, but watch this. What happens in 25? Listen to this. In Leviticus 25, verse 23, it says, the land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine. What land is God talking about saying that's his? Jerusalem. Jerusalem belongs to the Lord God. Do you know that virtually everything we've been talking about when we've been talking about them coming into the land, and every time we're talking about 70 years, we've always been talking about the land of Israel. Israel is what we've been talking about all this time. They came into land in 48, 48 to 49, 49 to 50, 50 to 51, Jubilee, 51 to 50, Sabbath, Shemitah year, 51 to 52. And then from the 5th year forward, it was now theirs. And that's why it's a Shemitah year this year. The only problem is they're not running it according to the stars like the Lord God said. They're running it according to the sun. And you can't really blame them because the sun is 2 months off. And if you're going to grow your crops, you had better be following the sun to an extent, right? But according to the Lord God, the feasts, according to him, that have never changed, start from the stars, are understood from the constellations, and the beginning is Taurus. That's why we haven't seen anything happen yet, because it's the count from Taurus, which means hold on, because the fireworks are coming, and it will be in October of 2022 that it all begins. Okay? So was it important that we understand this 70? Absolutely, it was important that we understand this 70. Excuse me. This 70 has the importance. How did I miss that? Or am I on it? Oh, I'm on it. The 70 is very important. This 70 is the 70 for Israel. It's the 70 for Israel. You see, we're not saying the 70th of Jerusalem. What are you going to do? Say the 70th of Jerusalem, and then you're going to count 14 years? No, because this says from 70 to 80, then soon, then we fly away. It's 14 years from the 70 for Israel. But did you know that there's another one? Did you know that there's another one? Check this out.
Hi, my name is Snehal Patel, and I'm the founder of Simpler Hair Color, a safer and simpler way to dye your hair. Restoration, which
okay, this video was shared in the forum, and I checked it out yesterday. I just want you guys to see who's with him here. There, I think it's Matt. Oh, there it is. Eric Steckelbeck is this guy here. Nice guy. He has that ministry channel too, where he does news about Israel all the time. I can't remember the name off the back of my hand. But this was Jonathan Cahn talking about, of course, his new book. Surprise, surprise. But talking about his book, I don't mind that, because he's sharing these revelations, this understanding, this digging into history. And as you watch it, and as you follow it, he's talking about the count of Jerusalem. You see, he talks about, 1867, that something had happened, that things started to get in motion. And then, of course, you get to 1917, and in 1917, the Ottoman Empire was coming to an end, and Jerusalem was taken back at that time of World War I. Ottoman Empire left, they were done with, and then Jerusalem became control under the British Mandate of Palestine for 50 years. Yet, if you say, well, what about Israel? Israel came into the land in the midst of all of that in 1948. It's a completely different cycle, you're going to find out. And this is something I used to get confused over a few years ago, because when people will say, oh, it was the Jubilee, it's the Jubilee, it's the Jubilee, I kept saying no. I kept saying, no, it can't be the Jubilee, because the Jubilee isn't until the 15th year after the 14 years of tribulation. Well, that's because there's more than one Jubilee. There's more than one portion of land. One portion of land belongs to Israel, and the other portion of land belongs to the Father, to which they are on it right now, as well as their land. They're also on the Father's land. But that's why he's got to remove them during the 7 years of seals. That's why there's going to be one attack at the beginning of 50 days and another attack at the end of 50 days by Syria and those with him that are going to remove Jews from Jerusalem for the next 7 years. And then this Zerubbabel character will come to rebuild, but only the foundation will get done during seals. And the land will remain at rest until the beginning of trumpets, when the rebuilding starts. Why? The rest of Israel doesn't have to rest. What about the rest of Israel? Why doesn't it rest for another 7 years? Well, they're going to be removed anyways, right? That's because it belongs to Israel, and Jerusalem belongs to the Father. He said, hey, you're not going to have it forever. This belongs to me. You guys are all strangers in my land. And so I used to say, no. The real Jubilee is at the end of the 14 years. It's the 15th year. That's the real Jubilee in 2037. Well, which Jubilee is this? Well, you can say it's the Jubilee of the people. This Jubilee is the long count from the creation of man. It is the long count. It's the big Jubilee count. But the Father, you're going to find out, still has a count for his land. And when watching this, I was reminded that, wait a second. Of course it was a Jubilee if you consider when the Jews got Jerusalem. What you guys don't know is 2 or 3 videos ago, and I had it at the end of my tabs, and I was going to talk about it for 2 or 3 videos ago. I was going to talk about it a couple times, and I kind of forgot where to incorporate it as I was going, and I didn't realize it till the end, so I said, oh, I'm going to leave it. And then I said, you know what? It's just not working. I'm just going to delete it. I'm not going to use it. Well, isn't that funny? I think the Lord God, was telling my wife about this yesterday, that I think the Lord God was purposely having me hold off on talking about it, because I was going to make a point that when Israel came into the land in 1948, they did have Jerusalem. They did have Jerusalem. However, it was divided. We know the Arabs attacked and there was a war started in 1948, but Israel was still in the land in 1948. It was officially theirs, and the British Mandate no longer had Jerusalem. However, Jerusalem was divided. It wasn't until, of course, 1967 that they reunited the land. And even though it's still east and west, the Jews have taken more and more and more of it, and they've been building everywhere in it for even their own people since 1967. You see, that's why every argument for the land and them others wanting to divide the land, they say we want pre-1967 borders. This is why it's so important. And so when he's talking about some of this, that it goes from 1867, it goes to 1917, then it goes to 1967, that's because we're not following the Jubilee cycles of Israel, of the land of Israel and the people. We are following the cycle of Jerusalem for the Father. You following? And when you follow the cycle for Jerusalem for the Father, well, then, of course, the 50th Jubilee year was indeed in 2017. All right? No mystery there. It was indeed 2017, the 50th Jubilee. But do you know that the Lord has something else for us? Do you know that the Lord told us some more things about it? Check this out. This is where you guys are going to really start to say, what? Some of you guys may remember a brief conversation we had on this a while back. I don't know if it was a live show with Mike or if it was in private with some of the guys in just in an off-air Zoom. But this actually caught my attention today. in the first year of Darius the Mede. Now we know Mede is Media Persia, but this caught my attention today because if this Darius type, I'm not saying it is, but if this Darius the Mede type is not directly having to be related, remember everything's types and shadows, that it doesn't necessarily have to be related to Persia in this case. It might, but it just came to my thoughts today as I was thinking about this and knowing that Prince Charles is now king. So this is all beginning in the first year of King Charles. I'm not saying that is the representation. I am simply saying that it did come to my thoughts today. All right. Now, what does Daniel say in Daniel 9:2? In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of years wherefore the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations, excuse me, of Jerusalem. Now, what I'm about to show you changes nothing about the 14 years. I'm about to show you more evidence. You're about to see that it starts after 70 and it ends at 70. You're going to see that while it is a 50-year jubilee of the people, it is the 70th year of the Lord. Does that ring a bell to somebody? Does that ding, ding, ding ring a bell? 50 and 70? Hello. Watch this. If it's to accomplish 70 years in the desolations, all we've done with this 70 years in the past is we were saying after 70, boom, it starts. Is that valid? Yes. It appeared to be very valid because we saw Psalms 90 and 10 and other scriptures that it's at 70 years it begins. At 70 years, or after 70 years is when the 14 years begins. We know there's the portion above, but when the 14 years begins with nation against nation, it will start with the destruction of Jerusalem and then being taken from the land. That begins the 14 years, and then World War III breaks out, nation against nation. It starts at 70 years. We see that everywhere, even in Zechariah chapter 1. But this says to accomplish 70 years in the desolations, meaning throughout the 70 years, there's got to be a desolations of it. And what does accomplish mean? To bring to an end, to accomplish, to fulfill, to finish. That means 70 years. At 70 years, it's finished. Well, that's not the case for Israel, is it? We've been combining, I've been showing you with Israel, Jerusalem combined. And when this was shared with me in Brian and I think Ed and a few others with Mike over on 165, when we were talking about this, I believe it was 2 years ago. And back then, the count just, it wasn't making sense. It seemed like, oh, we're like 2 years off. So we're like, it just doesn't jive. It's not going to line up. Because why? Well, we thought the pre-trib was going to happen back then. And then even if you took it last year would have been one too long as well. And you thought, so it was like, nah, it can't be. Well, why? Because back then, even last year, maybe being a little overzealous, we knew Leviticus 19, and we knew it said 3 years they couldn't take from it, and the fourth to the Lord. So I just took it as that fourth to the Lord as a typology of the bride going. But it wasn't at the end of the count. Those 3 plus 1 were at the beginning of the count, and then 70. Well, now we're at the end of the farthest, as we said, with the 4 years being done, and then 70. That started at the 5th year. So it wasn't lining up that if we took the 70th year of Israel, that it could also end in the 70th year of Jerusalem. At no point did this make any sense until now. That's why this became such a big deal for me to watch. right? He's always exciting. I kind of feel Jonathan Kahn and myself, where you just get so excited. You're sharing this and you're talking fast and you're sharing this. Same type of that excited personality because you just want to share it. It's so exciting. All right. Well, let's keep going. To accomplish 70 years, to fulfill 70 years in the desolations of what? Israel? Nope. Jerusalem. So let's go have a read at what it says in Daniel 9, starting in verse 24. Listen to this. 70 weeks are determined. Let's see what the word determined means. Cut off, decreed. So there's 70 years decreed over Jerusalem. Remember, this is Jerusalem. 70 years are decreed over Jerusalem. Are decreed upon thy people and upon thy holy city. To what? To finish, to shut up. So it's at the end of 70 years of Jerusalem, it's saying, that holy city. So there's 70 over the people, and there's a 70 over the holy city. To finish, meaning the 70 weeks is finishing it. 70 weeks are of years, remember. It says to finish the transgression and to make an end. I think that's pretty close. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? To make an end, to stop, to close up. That means at the 70th, everything's going to be over. You following? It's got to be all over at the 70th. It's when it's all stopped. Then it says, and to make reconciliation. To make. Okay, to cleanse, to purge away, to anoint, to cover. Meaning once the 70 is over, there's going to be a reconciliation. It says, and to bring in. Look, to come, to carry. So to come into the land. To make a reconciliation. To come into the land, to bring them into the land. Everlasting righteousness, and to seal up. There it is again. To close up, to stop. The vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Is the most holy being anointed during the 14 years? Is he being anointed at the beginning of seals or something? No. At the end, make an end, to finish, to complete it all at the end of the 70 years of Jerusalem, to anoint the most holy when it all comes to an end. What do we know about this? It then goes on to talk about, as you guys know, the 14 years. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem, because it's going to be destroyed at the 14 years, and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, 7 weeks of years, 7 years. It's going to be an attack. It's going to be a light attack. Meteor's coming. 40 days of the Son of Man at the vanishing of the bride of Christ. The Son of Man is here for 40 days. There's going to be a decree that they're going to rebuild it. It's not going to happen at that moment. I mean, the Son of Man leaves. The second attack comes on day 50. The Holy Ghost has come and gone, has anointed the people. That second attack happens at True Tishri. And what happens? They're removed from the land. Syria is going to say, heck no, you're not rebuilding it. Prophecy says, heck no, you're not rebuilding it yet. That second big attack is coming. That's going to remove you from the land, because we know the Lord God has to what? Allow the land to rest for 7 years before he can build on it. These are those 7 weeks as years, just as these are 70 weeks as years that have to be accomplished. And what does it say? Comma and, meaning a separate 62 weeks, which is about 3.5 years, the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. What happens after the 7 years of seals? After the 7 years of seals are done, the Lord was here for that 1 year, like we were talking about earlier. And what happens at the beginning of the 8th year of tribulation, or the 1st year of trumpets? Zechariah chapter 8. Let your hands be strong, you who saw when the foundation was built, that we can build the temple. For before this time, there was nobody to build or to plow or do anything, because I set everyone against his neighbor. There was nobody to do it for the first portion, because they were removed from the land and war broke out. Now, it's going to be 3.5 years of rebuilding the city and the streets and the temple. You guys know this. And then what happens after that point? Then Messiah is cut off. What is the typology in what was? This is where Messiah is cut off, right? In the spring of 2033. After 3.5 years of ministry, and the one that was establishing things first. 1 year establishing, and then 1, 2, 3.5 of ministry. What happened in the was, or in the is with Christ? Then that cutoff was about the period of 2.5 days. Hands of sinful men, crucified, then in the grave and resurrected the 3rd day. Days will this time play out as years, as I said earlier, and it'll be a typology here of 2.5 years of being cut off. This cut off is a 2.5 year cutoff because of what? Because the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. Remember, he goes after them with a flood. This is Revelation 12:14, when they're removed on wings of an eagle for the final 3.5 years. They don't come back till I showed with Ezekiel 48, when they are going to receive their land. They're taken into protection until the 14th year is over. And what does it say? And unto the end of the war. We know this is the war against the 2 witnesses. So when Messiah is cut off for 2.5 days, but this time 2.5 years as days, what do you think it talks about? It's the 2.5 years of being cut off because Satan has come down, the pit is here, and there's the war against the 2 witnesses. Who are the 2 witnesses that are here during this 2.5 years of war? We already know this, right? We have the answer in Zechariah. If this is a typology of 14 years, this 6th year is like the end of the 6 years of seals. Who comes at the end of 6 years of seals? Yeshua, right? Well, look what it says. Zechariah 6 verse 11. Take the silver and gold and make crowns and set them upon the head of Joshua. Who's Joshua? Yeshua, the son of Jodak, the high priest. Remember, we did a video when he comes at the end of seals. He's as Melchizedek in that 7th year, and he is the high priest over the priestly line of the 144,000. That's why Revelation 14 said they follow him wheresoever he goes. And then it says, Zechariah 6 verse 12, and speak unto him, saying, thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, behold, the man whose name is the branch. Well, that's not Joshua the high priest. The branch, it says, and he shall grow up out of his place and shall build the temple of the Lord. Who's the one that gets to build the temple of the Lord? We know who gets to build the temple, right? It's Zerubbabel. So whoever the modern day Zerubbabel is the one who's going to be the overseeing of the rebuilding of the temple, because he was the one who laid the foundation, and he will be the one who gets to complete it. And then what does it say? In verse 13, even he shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon his throne, and he shall be a priest upon his throne, and the counsel of peace shall be between them both. Both. Who do you think the typology of Joshua is? Look at him right here. In Zechariah 3:1, and he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to resist him. Hello. Joshua is Yeshua. And we know the branch is Zerubbabel, because it was Zerubbabel who laid the foundation that we were told who is the one who gets to complete it. When are they completing it? During the first half of trumpets. So if Zerubbabel is there and Joshua are there as the types, and they're called the branch and right from the two olive trees, it even tells you their names. It even tells you, right? It tells us who they are. It's Joshua and Zerubbabel. So whoever modern day Zerubbabel is the relation to one witness, and whoever is the high priest, King Joshua, Yeshua, is the other one. So what is this telling us? It's telling us at the time of him being cut off in spring time frame of trumpets in the 3.5 years into it, which is 10.5 years, Messiah is cut off. It's the exact time as it was 2,000 years ago, the same count of years to 2,000 years. But this time, his being cut off is not a period of 2.5 days. It's a period of 2.5 years. And we have proven this in so many places. Here's an example in Genesis chapter 8. In Genesis chapter 8, we see the end of the 40 days, like the typology of the end of the 40 days of the Son of Man. Then the raven, the Antichrist spirit, goes out. Then the dove at the 50th day. The dove anoints and then leaves. Then what happens? Then it says the dove returns and stayed 7 days. Those 7 days are 7 days that happened in history that are a typology of years in the end of days. These are 7 of seals. Then you have the rapture group, the plucked off portion. And then after the rapture, what does it say? Which we know happens in the 7th year as 7 days. Then you have what? Stayed yet 7 other days. What do we know is 7 days? 7 years of trumpets. And then when the dove goes out and returns no more, it just so happens it's the 600th, first year, first month, first day of the month, which is like saying the 6,000th, first year, first month, first day of the month. You see? Days as years. Another example for those that are new is in Luke. There's this fantastic story to understand in the Mount of Transfiguration. And when I finally realized this story and the revelation of it, I freaked out. It was probably like 3 years ago now or more. And what had happened is I finally understood that the about 8 days or about an 8 days was years. And what does it mean? Well, if this is 7 days and the escape of the bride of Christ and the 40 days of the Son of Man as the white horse rider happens before the next cycle of 7, what is the first year of tribulation? Well, it's really the 8th year, right? There was 7 years, and when you go back to 1, even in a week, it's like the 8th day or the 8th year. So this in Luke says that it was about an 8th day, meaning it's almost the 8th year, which means sometime towards the end of the 7, right? Meaning sometimes toward the end of the 7, and it's just about the 8th year. But then, so what do you get? Well, you got the typology of days as years. What do you get in Mark? You get it a little bit different. Like I've talked about this many times in the past. Mark and Matthew, I knew very well for a long time. Mark and Matthew both say after 6 days. Well, that's a major discrepancy, isn't it? If Mark and Matthew both say after 6 days, well, then Luke's is a major discrepancy and you can't get around it. You can't say it's just perspective. Whatever pastor you asked, if they told you it was just perspective, they lied to you. They weren't strong enough to say they didn't understand. We understand it. The after 6 days for Mark relates to the after 6 years of seals. Who shows up? The Lord. That's the typology of the transfiguration story in Mark. Matthew says what? After 6 days as years. What happens at the end of the 13 years or the end of the 6th year of trumpets? Well, the 2 witnesses die, and then what? They're brought up to heaven, and the Lord, bang, returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives. That's at the end of the 6th trumpet to the start of the 7th. So, again, about in 8 days is a typology of years. After 6 days, typology of years in prophecy. After 6 days, typology of years in prophecy. You see that? So what do we get? We get the conversation of this connection of days being as years in the end. Well, have you ever found this interesting? That if you go to the story of the crucifixion, right? The plot to kill Jesus, right? Jesus with his disciples, and then what? He's taken into the hands of sinful men. Right? He's taken into the hands of sinful men, and it's what? 1 chapter, 2 chapters, 3 chapters. But the actual story from taken into the hands of sinful men, his crucifixion and his resurrection, that's 2.5 days, plays out over 2.5 chapters. And it's the same for Mark, starts in 14. It's the same for Luke, starts in 22. But you know what it is in John? It's pretty wild. In John, it starts in 18. Do you know why it starts in 18? 18, 19, 20, as 2.5 years of chapters to years in a typology. Why does Matthew, Mark, and Luke, why do Matthew, Mark, and Luke all go right to their last chapter, but John's resurrection story doesn't go to the end, it goes to his 20th chapter? Well, it's like I showed you earlier. So anybody that's new, it's like I showed earlier. See, John is one of those books that is opened with chapters to years in it. And guess what? At the end of 20 years of the big picture, which is the same as the end of 13 years of trumpets, what happens? The resurrection of the Lord, returning at the end, right? The 2 witnesses are killed, then stand up, and the Lord returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives. That's the story of John. It started what? In 18, when he was cut off. Look at that. What year is that? 3.5 years into trumpets. It's what? It's the time of Passover, second Passover, somewhere in there, of 2033. And look at what it starts in. John 18. It's about 2.5 later in the total story timeline that he then is resurrected, as if being at the end of the 13th year when the Lord returns, feet down. Now, why am I showing you this? Why am I explaining and showing that typology that's taking place there? Because there are also events that haven't taken place that tell us about days, but they were prophetic and they never took place as days yet. So they're not to be turned around and called years. One of them, of course, is what I was telling you earlier. Jesus is going to be as Jonah was. Jonah was a 40-day prophet to Nineveh. So shall the Son of Man be in this generation, right? To this generation, to the final generation. These 40 days were prophecy that he hasn't fulfilled. So they're not going to be years, they're days. We know that in Mark, they never played out. He said there was nothing. People think it's contradiction because there was no sign given to them and he left. That's a clear contradiction, just like the day counts was, right? In the 866. Well, this is a major contradiction too. Well, this hasn't been fulfilled, so it's not going to be 40 years, it's going to be 40 days. The Mark one wasn't fulfilled, and they're not getting a sign. That's why when they see him come at the end of the 6 years of seals, and they all see him coming, they don't know when they get to go. Because when they see him coming in the clouds for the Mark group, for the great multitude rapture, they don't go right away. There's 7 months of things that are going to take place before they get to go up. What about Matthew? Matthew, where is it in Matthew? Is it 12 or 16? I always mix it up with Matthew. Oh, no, I don't. Matthew 12. You see, in Matthew 12, he tells them what? For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights. You see, that's very clear, isn't it? It's 3 days and 3 nights. But when the whole world has been taught from the Gospel of Matthew, you think that this is something that must have been fulfilled at his crucifixion, that he was 3 days and 3 nights in the grave. But he wasn't, because we got 15 pieces of scripture that tell us he resurrected on the 3rd day. That's literally impossible if it's 3 days and 3 nights in the grave. So if it's 3 days and 3 nights in the grave, what does that mean? Sometime on the 4th day. Does he ever do something in the 4th day in the middle of the night? No. He comes early in the morning, which would equal 3.5 days. This is prophecy. This never happened yet. The only place where there's 3.5 days total mentioned, 3 days and 3 nights and a half, is the 2 witnesses. They're the 2 witnesses in Revelation chapter 11, when it said, after 3 days and a half. What is after 3 days and 3 nights? What's the half? The morning portion. They haven't played out yet. And if it hasn't played out, you see, I was talking to my wife about this earlier, that a couple of years ago, what was really baffling, even up to the last year actually, when I finally realized that the 2 witnesses were Jesus, Joshua, right? And whoever the Zerubbabel will be, when it finally sunk in and I finally got it, this is what had been bothering me before. I knew this typology of 2.5 years representing the 2.5 days of taken in sinful hands, taken to prison, and then crucified and resurrected. I understood it was a typology of 2.5 years. It was all over prophetically in the Gospels. But I had an issue. Because prior, I kept thinking, well, how on earth are the 3 days and 3 nights going to get fulfilled by Jesus again from mid-trumpets if there's only 2.5 years to when he returns, feet down, and destroys the enemy? Something was wrong. And when it finally dawned on me that the 40 days we had known for a long time weren't fulfilled, and they'll remain as days, it also meant that the 3 days and 3 nights, which meant sometime on the 4th day, there was that wasn't fulfilled. That wasn't going to be a year count, but would be a day count that still has not been fulfilled. And it didn't dawn on me until I started to recognize, we got videos about the 2 witnesses from a few months ago. You can go watch them. And it dawned on me, just like Moses was responsible over Israel to bring them to the Jordan, but he wasn't allowed to go into the promised land, Joshua was. Joshua, Yeshua, like the end of the 6 years of seals, it is Joshua, Yeshua, who is able to bring them over. He is the one that brings them over into the promised land. He is the one. He is the high priest king. He is the Melchizedek. And the only way for all that to line up from Zechariah to equal that portion in Matthew, which is the portion of trumpets, which goes to the end of trumpets, is if those days never played out. And Messiah is going to be one of the two witnesses. That is why they follow the Lamb wheresoever he goes. How could they follow him for 3.5 years wheresoever he goes as the high priest? Because they're the priestly line. The Father gave him the 144, the priestly line, and they're going to follow him wheresoever he goes. Where are they going to follow him? In heaven? The only way they could follow him is if he's here on earth. That's when he's here as one of the two witnesses, as Joshua. It's amazing, amazing stuff, guys. It's just beautiful, beautiful to understand. Well, now, let me continue on with this storyline. You see, what ends up happening with the Lord's feasts? Okay, we know that when you come into the land which I shall give you, then you shall the land keep a Sabbath. Right? That's the Shemitah cycle. 6 years, and then the 7th year, it rests. Well, what else is a rest? What about the Jubilee? Right? And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths, even unto the 7 times 7, a space of 7 years, 49 years. Well, what is that 49 years? Yeah, you guessed it. These are the 7s, right? And this takes us what? To the 49th year. Oh, sorry. This one right here takes us to the 49th year, which is what we showed right here. This takes us to the final 49th year. All of those 7s, right? 7, 7, 7. This is right to the end, and it's the final Jubilee. And there's a reason, obviously, there's a reason why I'm showing you this. So, whoops. It takes you to the 7th year, which is a Sabbath year of rest. A Jubilee is a Sabbath year of rest, right? Now shall hallow the 50th year, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and you shall return every man unto his family. Did you hear that? Every man unto his possession, and every man return unto his family. It's a time of liberation unto the land. For what? Every man. What does that equal? Right here. This is the final Jubilee. It is the Jubilee of man, of Israel, and their portion in the land, just like I showed it equaled with Ezekiel 48, and each one getting their land. But if you remember, back over in Daniel 9, everything the Lord was saying was that 70 years needed to be accomplished for Jerusalem. There had to be an end made in those 70 years. That when 70 years came, it would be the end. Everything would be accomplished. And it just so happens you have what? 7 years of seals while they're removed from the land and everything comes against the Christian. You have the rebuilding of the city and the streets for the next 3.5 years after seals. You have Messiah cut off and this war that takes place over 2.5 years against the two witnesses. That's 13.5 years. Then you have the final year, the final week as year, when the Lord had returned. After those 2.5 years, then he was killed, right, as one of the two witnesses. And then he returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives. At that end of 13, start of the 14th year. And what does he do? He's going to confirm the covenant that he made with many for 1 year. And in the midst of the week, he's going to cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. You see, because all this stuff that was going on in the temple by these guys. And for the overspreading of abominations, he's going to make it desolate. Remember? He said he's got to put an end to it. Right? He's going to lay waste to bring everything to what? To an end for all the abominations and the filth that was in it. until the consummation. What's the consummation? Until the completion. And that determined shall be poured like liquid. Think the bowls. A lot of people will say, why don't I talk about the bowls? Because when the Lord returns feet down on the Mount of Olives at that 14th year, to start that 14th year in trumpets, it's all about destroying all who came against him. There's going to be another massive battle, Satan bound, then the Antichrist and false prophet be the first two thrown into the pit. Satan's going to be bound for 1,000 years, and it's a battle that's going to destroy all of the enemies. And the bowls will happen at that time as well. See, even unto the desolate. And so we don't talk about it too much because the bowls are going to be a very short period of time when the whole world will have already seen the Lord coming. And they'll play out over a short period of time. So even unto the consummation, which is what? The completion. Until it's all over. So when the 14 years are all over, according to the revelation of what we're reading here in Daniel, when it's finished, all that's determined has been made to an end. To be able to bring in everlasting righteousness, to be able to seal up and make an end of the vision, and to anoint the most holy. 14 years must pass, and then it should be what? 70 weeks, the 70th year over. You've reached the 70. Is that true? How about this? How about there's no baloney? How about there's no just lip service and not showing you anything? You know I show you absolutely everything. I want to give you every single detail so you can prove it to yourselves. Did I do a year skip somewhere? Did we jump over Sabbaths all the way from Christ? Did it just so happen to land that there was 4 years when they came in and then it starts a new cycle? Did it just so happen, as I said earlier, that 2,000 years later, the exact same year count is going to play out for Christ? To the exact year count 2,000 years later? Do you think it's a mistake that 70 years comes to end in 2022 from when they came into the land with 4 years and the 5th began theirs? All of these things have been revealed from Scripture. And when the people portion for Israel in the Jubilee ends, it will be the year 2037. 2037 in the Jubilee year. And guess what? How about when we look at Israel, Jerusalem? They got Jerusalem, right, in 1967. Okay, so in 1967 to 1968, this is the completion of 1 year. Okay, this is Jerusalem following the 6-day war. And what happens if we count? Am I skipping numbers? Am I skipping Sabbath jumps? Did I even make a mistake? No. There's your Jubilee. But the Lord God didn't say a Jubilee for Jerusalem, did he? Is there a Jubilee here for Jerusalem, or did he say 70 weeks as years? There's not a 50 in sight. He said 70 years are to be accomplished for Jerusalem. And to get to those 70, you're going to have to go through 14. But when are those 14 going to begin so that you can get to my 70th to complete for Jerusalem? You're going to have to complete 70 for your own land. Hello. Look at this. What happens when the 14 years come to an end? Can you see that? Can you see that? 70th year for Jerusalem. It will be a jubilee for Israel and the return of their land, and it will be the 70th year for Jerusalem for the Lord God. Do you know why this is a big deal for us? Do you know why this is just so mind-blowing for us? Because we've talked about the Shroud of Turin before, haven't we? Anybody who wants to see this, this is a great video. I sent it to my mom too. She knew about it, but I don't think she knew these details. I was talking to my mom about some things with the Shroud of Turin and the pendant the other day. She's like, "You're freaking me out, honey. It's just too much." So what happens? Here's the video. You can come to this channel. I don't know who they are. I was just, this again, this was shared in the forum. And so I was watching some of it. And this is the Shroud of Turin. And when you see and you hear even some of the Jews talking about it, man, it's so unbelievable. I assure you with all my being that this was truly Christ. This is what Christ was wrapped in. And they explain how there's no way it could be reproduced because of the distance where the material was touching them. It's perfectly, it's very sharp. And where the material was lifted off the body, like, you know, there's a crease or a bend or a wave in the material, it wasn't touching the body. So that portion is very light. You could not reproduce it like that. That's just one thing. I mean, it's over and over and over again. But this is the shroud right here. And do you see this right here? You see this right here? Christ was wearing a pendant. Let me show you another spot, just so you guys could see. Christ was wearing a pendant. To most people, they never understood what the letters were and the reasoning for the letters. I've never heard any study or anything that they understood it. In fact, if you go and do research on it, it's almost impossible to find a picture of the image of that pendant to even to find something like this. Even to find where is it? Oh, I think I was going to share a couple things in here. Oh no, see? There's the pendant again. I think I shared those few seconds earlier, but I wanted to show, as you guys know, this one right here. You can't find a pendant anywhere that actually shows this on it. I mean, I went and I did a whole bunch of image searches and everything, and I couldn't find it. That's why I keep coming back to this video from Nelson Walters, again, about the shroud, and very detailed because of lasers and what they found in it. And so this is a big deal. I believe that this was speaking for us, for this ministry, because I've never found any explanation as to why it was or to the understanding of it. Yet, what does it say? Jews go from right to left. This is ayin, which means 70. This is aleph, which means the head of Taurus, beginning, 1, all right? And nun is the Hebrew letter number 14. 14 equals 50. This is what the Spirit led us to in the revelation of the video of 1450. This was the pendant they discovered that Christ was wearing. 70, beginning, and 50. Do you think it has importance? 70 for Jerusalem and 50. What is this the beginning of? Christ's millennial reign. The beginning's reign. In the beginning, Christ, the head, the aleph, the ox. He is reigning at the Jubilee of 50 and at the 70 of the land of the Father. The millennial reign will begin. You see, we understand the smaller 50, don't we? We had incredible revelation for us to understand with Taurus. Where is it? So people can see what I'm talking about. This is Taurus. This is the eye that's called Aldebaran, which is called, it means the follower in Arabic, and it also means the eye of revelation. That's pretty awesome, right? This eye, this star, which represents this word right here, nun. Noon in Hebrew, of course, for those that don't know, noon in Hebrew, here it is the 50th number, and it's what? The 14th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It's the 14th letter, and it equals 50. This star is the 14th brightest star in the sky, and it's called bullseye. A bullseye is worth 50 points, and 14 equals 50. And it's the 14th brightest star in the sky. This was the revelation that the Holy Spirit gave us a little over 2 years ago. Well, this other eye right here, this one right here, this star right here is called Ayin, or Ain, they also call it. Ain, as you could see, is right here, and it means 70. So Christ was wearing from right to left 70, Aleph meaning the beginning, and 50. And the ministry who got the revelation, who was given the revelation to understand his pendant, was the one who was given the understanding of the 14 equals 50, of noon equals 50, which of course, as we said, was the bullseye. And this is the bullseye, Aldebaran, and this is the other eye called Ain, or they also say Ayin. It's awesome, guys. It's so awesome.
For just 67.
Now I'm going to show you something else.
You can make as many videos as you want, and you
as we
never
bring
need
this
to
to
pick
a
up
close.
camera or use-
Check this out. You guys helped me find this. I'm not going to go through it. I just want to share you guys to show you guys some points as to why it's important. It just so happens that the Jubilee of the land for the people and the 70th of the Father for Jerusalem happen at the beginning when the millennial reign will start, and the year is 2037. Do you know how important 37 is biblically from the beginning? Whoops. From the beginning, sorry. So I'm going to get this highlighted one more time. This 37 is awesome. I couldn't remember which video it was, and some brothers and sisters found it over on our brother Michael over in Australia found it. Remembered which one it was. It's from the livingword.org. It goes into the story of Genesis 1:1. And it turns out that the whole in the beginning story is a revelation of 37 and its mirror 73. It is a wild number ride of the number 37 and its mirror 73 in the beginning. Here's another thing about it. About 37. About the hexagon star. 37 is the only such number less than 1,000, and this is the number highlighted in the very first verse of the Bible, which when multiplied by its reflective 73 produces 2701, the sum of its value of the creation verse itself. Did you hear that? Number 37 is the highlighted number in the very first verse in the beginning of the Bible. And its reflected number 73 equals 2,701. And 2,701 is the sum value of the creation verse in Genesis 1 itself. Isn't that awesome? Well, check this out. Remember I was telling you about days as years? Look at that. 37 days. What were we just sharing? Excuse me? Weren't we just talking about something being days as years? Weren't we showing all of this proof and all of this evidence of days being understood as years in the end? And in the beginning, are you following this? In the beginning is the equivalent of the major number 37. Who's in the beginning? Who is the beginning? Aleph. Who's Aleph? Who is the beginning? Taurus. Taurus is the beginning. The beginning is 37. And 37 just so happened to be with 70 and 50 when it's all over. Hello. 37 is the creation number, and the end is the beginning. The beginning is the end. 37, the number as days, will equal the number as years, which is the beginning, which is Taurus, which is the ox, which is Aleph, the beginning, with 50 and 70. Oh man, this is just awesome, isn't it? Isn't that interesting? That 37 days also equals 888 hours, and 888 equals Jesus. Is this important to us as well? Yes, it is, because I've told you before, the first 8 was 8 billion people on earth at the time of the flood when it all began. They believe, studying through history, they believe that there was 7 to 11 billion people on the planet at that time. I believe the exact number at the time of the flood, when the door shut, was 8 billion people. I've been talking about it for 4 years. I talked about it in the last video. And when it starts this time, I believe it will begin when the world reaches that 8 billionth person is born. The door will shut, the bride will vanish, and the 40 days of the Son of Man will begin. And it just so happens that the UN World Stats for Population believes it's going to happen sometime between now and November 15th. Hello. And then what? And then when the tribulation is over and people will be living into hundreds of years again, but it will start off with millions right off the bat, when they will be transformed in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye, and people will live for hundreds of years again, just as we know from Isaiah 65. When that millennial reign is over, there will be 8 billion people on the earth. And when it's all over, the millennial reign comes to an end. All of creation is ended. This world is finished. It will be 8 billion, 8 billion, 8 billion Jesus. Because it's all his, the beginning and the end. How's that? Brothers and sisters, I hope this sinks in. I hope you take your time, you seek this out, you study it. This is the revelation of the end of days. It is what this ministry has been given to reveal for the last 5 years today. We are so close, brothers and sisters. I'm going to, if I don't have this, I should remember to have this in the video. It'll be the new link for this one. So you'll see it with Jerusalem count now on there. I want you guys to absorb it again. Print it or just download it and scroll through it. Count it out for yourself and see it for yourself. Everything I have shown you is biblical, is counted biblically, is numbered biblically, and equals everything from the is and the was to the is to come. every single piece landing in the timings that it should, right across the board. Isn't it fantastic that we know that at the 70th year, coming to an end, it ends at the end of 50 days? Is that not the revelation of this ministry? 70 ends. When does 70 end? It's the same story what we were showing here. When does 70 end? When the 70 years are over, or sorry, it'll be the 50 days. When the 50 days are over, the 14 years will begin, and the 70th year will be over. And it all begins. 70, 50, 14, the beginning. It starts it and it ends it. It's fantastic. This is fantastic. It's all right here. Every part and piece of the revelation to understand it is right here in a simple chart of year counts lined up to Scripture. It's not 7 years for anybody that's new. Do you understand what was just shown to you? This is the revelation of the open books of the Gospels, the 14 years, and all the other books from Genesis to Revelation. Look at this, guys. Are you going to try and tell me that it's going to be, 22, 23, we got to wait one more year because we're going to go past the Feast of Trumpets? Get ready. Because as we go past the Feast of Trumpets, like we know we're going to do for a few days, you're going to hear a whole bunch of people clamoring saying it's not this year. You're going to hear some say, see, if this Shemitah passed and we're starting a new cycle, it's not going to be this year. They would have no choice. All they understand is 7 years. They don't understand that it's off by 2 months. They don't understand that when it still does begin in October, that it's not beginning because it was the cycle of Tishri. It's because it was 2 months off. The truth is 14 years, brothers and sisters. And it's all right here for you to seek and to study for yourselves. Man, I pray this excites you as much as it does me. I pray that it blesses you, brothers and sisters. I will remember to put it in the comment section, so it'll be in the description box under the video with all sorts of other links and everything in there as well. Brothers and sisters, I love you. God bless you. God bless your families. If you haven't watched this last video before this, please go watch it because you won't be able to sleep. You are going to be so excited. We are at the door. I love you guys. God bless you. God bless your families. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.